and other materials from DTUC. A roll of taped-together petitions containing 15,000 signatures was wrapped around the library. Kootenay West MP Lyle Kristiansen is in favour of maintaining the fight to save DTUC. He said that the library could be the scene of a non-violent protest if books are taken away as scheduled on May 1st.
In a letter from Kristiansen, he is quoted as saying, "You have the right of freedom of assembly, you have the right of freedom of speech, you also have the right to exercise these rights in order to protest what you consider to be your property or assets, private or public."
Kristiansen continued on to say, quote, "I strongly suggest that you consider exercising these rights in a visible and responsible manner at all and any locations where you may have reason to suspect that the provincial government or its agents might attempt to remove property from DTUC." Kristiansen also indicated that he himself would take part in such a demonstration. He said if his physical presence is requested in order to protect the community's rights and assets, then all the city needs to do is ask, and he will be on his way.
In the House of Commons in Ottawa, a bill was introduced by the New Democratic Party which would have required the provinces to use federal health and education funds for the purposes for which they are intended rather than diverting a percentage of other projects, as in the case at present. The amendment was defeated by the Liberals, joined by 16 of 17 BC Conservative MPs.
Library protest organizer Reverend Bob Morris told the crowd at a rally held yesterday that although he hoped that BCTV would air film of the demonstration, the network indicated it would not be interested in footage unless the demonstrators were actually stopping the books from being removed from the library.
The March 29th reading with Federal Secretary of State Sir Joyal has given the people of Nelson new hope for the future of DTUC. Joyal has agreed to 3 points. Number 1, immediate funding for research and development work being carried out by the consulting firm Johnson and Associates.
Number 2, a visit by Orest Krulak, Pacific Regional Manager for the Office of Secretary of State to Nelson, on Tuesday to tie up details of the funding.
Number 3, assignment of David Cameron, Federal Undersecretary of State in charge of education, to work closely with the city to find alternate funding solutions for DTUC. Joyal also asked the city to form a registered society to handle DTUC.
Joyal is also concerned that a substantial portion of the $451 million in federal funding for higher education is being spent on other projects by the BC government. Joyal has also appointed a task force headed by former CBC President Al Johnson to examine current financing arrangements and to propose alternate methods of funding for post-secondary education.
Now stay tuned for footage of yesterday's rally held at David Thompson University Centre.
When you turn off, anything with the memory in the back. For example,
there are over 15,000 names on this petition, and I think that's pretty exciting. Arthur, stop screaming.
Thank you very much, Bob. That is just about half of the list of names, by the way. As I just told you, there are 15,000 names, and these petitions were sent all over BC. People signed them and sent them back to us. Also, there were 30,000 students in British Columbia throughout BC who signed petitions supporting us, and all the petitions read, "Save DTUC." So my message today is to really emphasize the amount of support that we have received throughout the whole province for this great long fight that we've been putting up to save this university. And today, of course, it's to save our library. Most of you know that the contributions to the library started way back in the 30 some years ago when this university was first built. The large contributions started in 1967 with the $50,000 from the Knights of Columbus in centennial year to give this library a great boost. Then there was the Turner Foundation, and of course the provincial government, and private citizens have donated an untold number of books and wealth in the way of books to this library. Most of us know about the Kootenai Anna collection, which we especially want to keep in this library and not to see it taken away and disappear from our particular town. I love a little quotation from Socrates, which I think is very fitting at this moment, and it says, "Learning is an ornament in prosperity, a refuge in adversity, and a provision in old age," which is us now. And,
Speak for yourself, Fran.
Anyway, just one more word about the amount of support that we have been receiving throughout British Columbia. The latest, as we all know, is Mr. Joyal, the Minister of State, who has shown an interest and has promised that he will help to fund the research that is going on at the moment as to ways of keeping this university alive, of bringing it back to life. And the Sun, the Province, the Vernon paper, the Terrace paper, the Crescent paper, those are three that we know of. And also UBC, UVic, the Okanagan College students have all contributed in verbally and with money and on paper. CBC, BCTV, Cable 10. We've had letters from the Trail City Council, from school boards all over British Columbia. We've had letters from all over Canada, and we've had checks, we've had donations from Ontario right across to Victoria and Sydney, BC. This just tells us how much support that we have been receiving and we still do. We have people whose very hearts are with us in this fight that we have to save the university, and specifically today to save the contents of this library. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thanks, Fran. One of those that all of us know has worked hardest for saving DTUC is Mayor Louis Maglio, and I'm grateful to him for being willing to come and say a few words today. Mayor Maglio.
Thank you, Bob. Very pleased to see such a wonderful turnout this morning, or this afternoon, I might say, to show your concerns and displeasure of the provincial government's decision to close our university center here, and most of all this morning for the closure of the library. You've heard the resume that was given to you by Fran or of the a lot of it was done all by local contributions, and we're sorry to see the place close and have these things go out of here. And I think we should do everything possible to keep the library here. We will also keep on fighting for our rights. I am sure that you will all agree with me that this government has no compassion for us, nor want to seriously discuss our proposals. We have to make them understand that we're still part of British Columbia and deserve some recognition. The only ones that we're getting a little bit of encouragement now from our meeting at Serge Joel last week. He is very sympathetic and very concerned at the attitude of our provincial government in the closure of this center, for one thing, and he's also concerned on whether the money that is being funneled from the federal government to the province is going to the proper channels, and he has a task force set up to look into it, and hoping that we might be able to come up with some solution in funding for the community. After all, when you hear about over $450 million being earmarked for post-secondary education from the federal government, you think that a couple of $1 million wouldn't hurt them over here. And I'm sure that if there's anybody that's going to do any good for us, will be Sir Joel, the Minister of State. He has also given us some encouragement that there would be some funding available, probably for the study that we are making to come up with proposals to the minister in regard to further education of the center, further courses and so forth. So we may get some help immediately on that, in that regard. As you know, this center has been a real blow, not only to ourselves, but the whole of the Kootenays. And we will do everything within our power to keep it open. All I want to say to you today is I'm very happy to see you here all, and keep on fighting through word of mouth. I'm sure that we will eventually get this government to consider the effort that went into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Louis. I think that one of the most wonderful things that happened in this library was its beginning and the wonderful gift from the Knights of Columbus. I've been looking around to see if Morgan Jones is here. Morgan, where are you? Come on up. And bring whoever you're bringing. I tried to check by phone, Morgan, as to who you're bringing with you, but your daughter didn't know. Morgan Jones, Knights of Columbus. Oh, go ahead.
Jeff Rowley Hurst, I'm just here more as a concerned citizen more than anything. I'm not at liberty to speak for the Knights of Columbus at this time. I'm very sorry to see this great institution that Mr. Wellwood has so greatly looked after and brought to its fine state that it is in today. And it's a shame that such a thing has to go down the tube, so to say. Thank you.
We are here because we don't believe it does have to go down the tube. We think there's a future for it, and that's why we're here today. One of those who helped establish the library and helped carry books here is Arthur Bartsch, and I want him to say a word on behalf of those who carried these books into this library.
Hi, everybody. It's interesting for me to stand here because I just think that it was a few years ago, a few days ago, when this library was built. I see in the audience just a handful of those people who were here in 1967, in the springtime, when we actually built this up. Yes, Gordon Petter and Don Wilson, and I just had some, Dr. Kluge back there. I think this is a remarkable moment that we're in, and it's a critical moment. I was here when this library was built. I remember when Father Aquinas brought in these two wings of the library on as a kind of a gift, really. We got them, I think, for $2,000. They were unloaded there on the park car. And then we bodily lifted them over into this place. I remember Mr. Baravelli digging the foundations. I remember Miss Strawberry, the librarian, carrying some timbers. And in fact, all 50 of us faculty got to work and dragged the pieces into place. I also remember when we moved the books into the place, and we assembled all 50 or 60 of us in a long chain all the way from where the clay is now. That's where the library used to be. And we dragged them passing them from one person to the other, all the way into this library. A bucket brigade of real sorts. I remember too a couple of accidents we had while the building was being constructed. Our president himself fell through the roof. As he broke his arm, he bled a little. You might say figuratively, flesh and blood went into the building of this library. And the dedication then took place in the spring convocation, which these mentioned people were there. I'd like to say a word now about the significance of the library. To me, it's a sanctuary of learning. And if we lose that, we will lose everything. The library is, in that respect, a holy place. And I appeal to you never to forget that when you are fighting for an institution here. I remember reading in Milton's famous work on the freedom of the press, where he says, "He who kills a man kills a reasonable creature, God's image. But he who destroys a book kills reason itself, the image of God, as it were, in the eye." So it's an important place, and we cannot afford to lose it. You take away our library, and we die.
Thanks, Arthur. I was asked as I showed up here today why it had been billed as an old people's rally. This isn't an old people's rally. There isn't one old person here today. They're all my contemporaries, and we're not old people. However, when I was asked if I'd help organize this, it was suggested that we might make an emphasis on those of us who are over 50 as a way of demonstrating that the library here in this community is not simply a matter of concern to the students. And I'd like to say a special word of appreciation to all those over 50 who showed up to tell us that. And also, as an indication of the kind of meaning this library has for older people, I'm going to ask Sam Dodds to come forward and tell us about a patient in the old folks' place across the street that he visits every week and has taken books to. Sam.
This library means more than a resource for students. It has also been opened up to the use of the community at large. And I'm sure there are many who have missed the opportunity to visit reference works and to call out special books and the subjects which interest them most. Not the least of these are the patients in our local hospitals. I know one, Mount St. Francis, who had to be told yesterday that the two books which he had just borrowed, which were now being returned to the library, would be the last he would get from DTUC, unless the university and the library could be kept going. That is a serious thing. I think it would be a terrible loss to this community. That's all I have to say.
Our next guest I introduce with a little hesitation and trepidation because he is a minister, and those of us who are ministers tend to go on and on and on, but under orders to keep it short. I want to ask Wayne McKenzie to share a word with us about what it means to be a parent of a student here at DTUC and the difference it's going to make to lose that facility. Wayne.
Thank you, Bob. I just thought it might be of interest to the people that are here to know that you can visualize a retired pastor. We don't have much money, you know. And living here in the city, it just occurred to me that I have been permitted to keep perhaps $10,000 in reserve for years 3 and 4 of my son's education at UBC, which he's presently doing now, because he could attend here for the first 2 years. So it might be worthwhile to think this is what many people in this community and surrounding communities have found out, that this university, as it provided equivalent university education for the first 2 years, has served a very real purpose. And I don't know whether I could have stood for 4 or 5 years of university training for my son at UBC or UVic or Simon Fraser. But because of the first 2 years that my son was able to spend here, we have accumulated or kept sufficient funds intact, saving them since he was born from the children's allowance, in order that we might have enough to send him to university. It has served a real purpose for our family. Thank you.
You realize this is a square thing?
Thank you, Wayne, very much. A word from Richard Rowberry of Theatre Energy concerning the meaning of this facility to that organization. Richard.
Thank you. Good house here tonight, this afternoon. As a member of Theatre Energy, I'd like to point out the importance to our company of the archives and other historical materials here in the DTUC Library. As most of you know, our company has created a number of historical plays over the years based on the cultural and political heritage of our area. Much of the material used was researched right here in this library, and it was taken and translated into theater, which played an important part in creating an awareness among us all of our rich past. It showed how we're all part of an ongoing tradition and way of life here in the Kootenays, and how all the different people, the miners, the loggers, the Doukhobors, the Japanese, and the orchardists, and I guess the hippies too, who came in the 70s, work together and continue to work together to create a unique and valuable community. Without these records and celebrations of our past, gradually over the years, our sense of that tradition would be lost. When a people's identity is being destroyed, one of the first things to go is a sense of their history. If these archives were to be taken away from us, they would not, we presume, be burned, but their fate would scarcely be any better. If they were to be buried away in some back room where no one would use them or even look at them from one year to the next, what difference would it make? They might as well be burned. These books belong to the people of the Kootenays. It's our right and duty to keep them here, and it would be to our everlasting shame if we were to allow them to be taken from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I have saved what I think is the best word for the last speaker, the chairman of the board of Notre Dame University, who have a concern in its continuance in DTUC, Marion Muth, and she has what I think is a strong and encouraging word for us. Marion.
One of the things I said to Mr. Carter was that I was really concerned about the number of items that seemed to be leaving this campus, and that I really felt that anything that Selkirk had purchased was purchased with a budget that was meant for David Thompson University Centre, and therefore they belonged to David Thompson, not to Selkirk. And he agreed. Well, then you think that's great. But this morning, Grant Fisher said to me, I mentioned the same things. The one thing that I feel is in our favour is that Richard Pierce has got an inventory, so surely that will slow things down somewhat. But we began talking about the library this morning, and Grant Fisher said, well, now, what books do you want to stay in Nelson? And I said, all of them. And I tried with each of them to find out, what are you going to do with the campus? And I couldn't find out anything. I don't know whether they don't know yet. One thing, I can't remember, one of them said to me is that they will still look at proposals that people wish to put in. Well, I have understood that Johnson & Johnson are working on proposals, to maintain this. I said to Carter, I just wanted to see a place of education maintained here. And he said, well, you know, all right, but. So, although Bob says it's upbeat, it's sort of upbeat with a great big question mark. One other thing now, Grant Fisher said this morning that they would be willing to maintain Mary Hall for a time so that the community could use the gym and the facility there. But what has always been wrong with David Thompson is that it does not have its own local board. And this is what they are looking for. Now, I don't know where we go. Maybe Mayor Maglio, well, maybe the city could do these things for the government. But they are looking, and they're willing to listen to someone who says, okay, we'll get the people in to run. The particular one that was asked me was the reunion for LBR, which is slated for the first week in August. And they have laid down a deposit. Nobody's ever told them that they can't run it. But the thing that really made me mad on Monday was Jim Carter said, oh, well, we intended to keep it open until September. And I said, well, nobody in Nelson knew that. And then he said, well, they've all canceled. And there are only 2 left. I thought, well, what do you expect if you're going to close it the 1st of May? So I get very angry, as you know. But anyway, I think that the high school reunion will be able to go if they can get someone to open Mary Hall and sort of run the parts of the facility that will be necessary for it. But as to what they're going to do with it, I just don't know. And I'm not sure that they know yet either. But, well, we'll keep it. But if Johnson & Johnson can get their programmer within, and it's an acceptable one, then I think we're all right. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion, and thank you for all you are doing to save us here. We had hoped that Lyle Kristiansen could be here today. He was in Nelson day before yesterday, and he couldn't be. So as our closing word, I'm going to ask Gerald Rotering to bring to us the message that Lyle wanted shared with you today.
Thank you, Bob. One doesn't have to be over 50 to have been involved with this library. I came to Nelson 7 years ago and began reporting for the Nelson Daily News. And I remember one of my very early assignments was to come up here and meet Mr. Woodward and see the fantastic job he'd been doing on a local collection and report on it. So even more recently, we're very well aware of the role the library has played. I'd like to read you what Lyle Kristiansen would have said to you today, and towards the end, I ask you to read between the lines. Dear friends, congratulations to all of you who have worked and are working so hard to save our university center and to preserve a major role and a facility for post-secondary education in Nelson. The almost total unity of purpose and action which has been demonstrated within our community on this issue is heartening and serves as a real shot in the arm to those of us who must maintain our momentum on a day-to-day basis. In spite of the rudeness and irresponsibility which continues to emanate from the highest level of government in Victoria, our collective persistence is beginning to show some results at other levels, and we at last have some concrete sign of hope. The recent upfront commitment by Federal Secretary of State Serge Joyal, although small in comparison to our real needs, constituted an immediate, important, and concrete demonstration of response to our concerns, as was expressed so well by your civic and community leaders at our joint Thursday meeting with the Minister in Vancouver. We know we are not alone, but the fight is just beginning. Considering the rude and sneaky way in which the provincial government acted in January and in meetings since that time, we must take care never to underestimate their willingness or capacity to act in similar fashions in weeks and days to come. You have the right of freedom of assembly. You have the right of freedom of speech. You also have the right to exercise these rights in order to protect what you consider to be your property or assets, both private and public. I would strongly suggest therefore, that you consider exercising these rights in a visible and responsible manner at all and at any locations where you may have reason to suspect that the provincial government or its agents might attempt to remove property or material from DTUC, including the DTUC Library, where such materials may well be necessary to the future delivery of post-secondary education in Nelson, a facility and program to which Nelson is still entitled under the laws of our province, and the nature of which is only currently a matter of negotiation. I wish to pledge to all of you that my assistance is available to you at any time in pursuance of our rights as a community, and if my physical presence is requested in order to protect our community's rights and assets, then ask, and I'll be on my way. Best wishes to you all. In the words of William Lyon Mackenzie, be firm, be united, never trifle with your rights.
Thanks very much, Gerald. It's nice to know that even those under 50 have a slip of the tongue sometime. Your Mr. Woodward is still Mr. Wellwood, and I know that was just a slip, but I'm sure glad that other people make them too. That's our program for our noon hour.
Join us next week for DTUC Update. I'm Gillian Browning.
And I'm Chris Thompson. Good night.
It's DTUC Update for another week here on Channel 10. Coming up next, a look at layoffs in Nelson.